Hi everyone. Today is Friday, February 28th, and so this is the last day of February, but still one or two more days of the challenge for kind of an overlap with the beginning of March, since there aren't 30 days in February. Usually on the 28th, we're kind of going back and discussing some things from earlier in the month as a way to notice if there are some kind of before and after improvements and progress. And well, earlier today, I was making a recording, actually some like music recordings. I'm starting to write some music, and it's becoming more and more apparent the effects of the short-term memory, the working memory. So if I'm playing something and I'm getting really kind of into it and excited about it, and it seems to be working and it's flowing on my fingertips, either for the guitar or for the piano. If I don't write that down, if I don't record it a certain way, and really kind of look at my fingers, what I'm doing, there's a chance that within a couple hours I'm going to forget, or obviously the next day I'm going to forget. And so I'm just trying to kind of acknowledge that for myself, the difference between the longer term memory and the short term kind of working active memory, and trying to keep those things in my concentration until somehow they get moved over into the longer term memory. And so I just want to acknowledge that, like, of all these recordings that I'm making, which are definitely like beyond 4.5 years, and within about 3 months or more now, it'll be close to 5. I acknowledge a lot of the vocabulary, words that are still missing from my vocabulary in a few different languages, and how a long time ago, probably like 20 years ago, my attitude was just keep improvising and keep trying to explain a concept, even though it was likely to be very annoying for the listener, that I wouldn't just give up and say a word in English. So I would take a long cut instead of a short cut. That stubbornness, I think, made me continue to use the language and stick with it. Yet it wasn't an effective communication strategy. So there are things to balance between being stubborn, wanting to keep practicing a language, yet fulfilling a communication function, which is to kind of be aware of the listener, and to not expect that they have infinite patience, or the like turn taking and active listening skills, and other principles of communication where we kind of willfully understand a person and understand their question and what they're looking for, and not try to undermine that at every moment, where if somebody says something serious and we respond with a joke or something sarcastic or a pun, that is undermining communication principles. So over the years, I've realized that in these efforts to want to practice a language and kind of refuse to give up and just say a word that I couldn't find, that I didn't know or didn't remember, and just say it in English, that was a failure of communication, though it might have been a short-term gain of practicing the language, yet was not kind of respecting the kind of communication principles. Then I did find some other language vloggers and people who would, instead of wasting time, just go straight in and say the missing word in English, and that they could find that more easily in a recording if they went back and listened. It would be much easier to spot those words that kind of stuck out. So to just be more pragmatic, more practical about it. So I have tried in some cases where try to explain an idea, but in some cases just say it in English and move on and not allow myself to just stay kind of stuck. And with teaching, I am trying to encourage students to look for these alternative communication strategies where if we don't know the word, do we know a synonym? Do we know a definition? Do an example? Can we use a mime or a gesture to keep the idea being communicated, even if we don't find the perfect word? And then that kind of leads me to this acknowledgement of like the working memory and how I believe that I have undiagnosed ADHD. So the effects of working memory, the executive function parameters, one of those things being that kind of short-term memory being very short, and yet at the same time I can teach languages, I can teach grammatical concepts, and those things go into a lot of long-term experiences and anecdotes and trivia and all this information that I've acquired over the years. I can repeat those things. I'm very certain about those concepts. It's when people ask me like, hey, can you pick something up at the store? If I don't write that down, I'm going to forget it. Or, oh, by the way, there's this thing happening at this time. Down as like it's something as an exception. It's not something I'm expecting in a routine. I'm going to forget that. And I'm now seeing it definitely at the surface with music, since I am writing more music right now, yet that active memory is very short-term, very frustrating because I'm creating something. It's not quite the same way as trying to remember a word for a concept that I don't know, or perhaps I did know at some point and I forgot it. But in the case of music, it's a creative act, and it is very ephemeral because I'm making it up for myself right then, and it can become very fluent in the moment. Yet that moment can easily erode and disappear. And so I'm trying to see how to mitigate that with writing something down or a video or a recording, and also making these efforts for myself with the vocabulary words that I want to learn. So in the spirit of a kind of a day 28 kind of recording where I'm going back and looking at something from the beginning of the month, I'm really more right now just reflecting on what am I doing to own this responsibility of supplementing my vocabulary, making it grow. There are times where I do respond to students' requests for like, show me all those vocabulary words, like these top most frequent words that I should be learning. And behind that request, sometimes I'm acknowledging a insecurity that like I don't know enough words in order to communicate, and I try to also mention that we always know enough, And if we do look at like a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old who has a minimum vocabulary range, maybe like 2, 3, 4, 5,000 words, that it's enough to satisfy certain needs in their daily life. And because of the practice of speaking for 3 or 4 years, they are fluent. They are able to understand other children, other adults. They're able to express themselves. They're able to ask for things, make requests, respond to requests, just the basics of communication. And I think adults, we get very impatient with wanting to carry over an adult level vocabulary range directly into another language from the beginning. And it's not realistic, it's not practical, because we have not put in the speaking practice that a child would have done, meaning that there would have been years of listening practice, years of pronunciation practice without being able to read or write. And adults tend to have a lot of dependence on reading and writing from the beginning and ignoring the listening process, and recognizing that many languages are more learned in an auditive, or I'm forgetting this word here in English, but using an oral, A-U-R-A-L method of learning, not a reading and speaking, and because that influences the pronunciation. So basically, when somebody is asking me like, okay, what are all these vocabulary words that I need, I'm more encouraging them to, like, whatever little range or however small that range is, become fluent at using it. So if you only know 100 words, become very fluent at those 100 words, and not feeling inadequate or that you're missing 49,000 other words. That eventually you might learn a couple more of those, but if you're never fluent with the 100 you already do have, you can actually express quite a lot of ideas with little combinations of things. So I try to apply that as well. I might have a certain vocabulary range in these other languages. I might be activating them through the practice. I do recognize that I'm still like not supplementing them enough with the words that I do want to further gain, because there are certain thematic areas in my vocabulary where I want to talk about some topics, like, I don't know, philosophy or teaching philosophy or teaching concepts. And I might not know the vocabulary words to be able to explain those concepts the way I might want to do that in English. Yet, am I going ahead and actively absorbing those words instead of trying to translate them? Am I listening to enough content that's related to those topics? Am I reading content related to those concepts? So if I'm not actively putting words related to those topics that I want to prioritize, if I'm not actively putting words into my well, my reserve, then it is going to be impossible to take those things out. It's an empty well. So I'm not surprised in certain areas. Also, for a couple of these languages, I've never, or I've had very limited experiences for traveling or being in those countries and cultures. So recognizing what's the word for push or pull, or how do I ask for the bill, or how do I order coffee, if I haven't had those experiences of walking in and out a door in another country, in that country, or just those practical things on daily life. If I haven't been to those countries, I might not have those vocabulary words. So I can express my thoughts and feelings on different topics, but on the practicalities of daily life, there's a lot of things I don't know because I haven't really spent enough time or at all in some of those countries. So the
the fluency in certain vocabulary ranges, it's very dependent on the topic. It's very dependent on the context, and I do see across the different languages where, obviously, claiming myself in English is my widest vocabulary range. Yet then, when I go into Spanish and French, I feel very, very comfortable, very fluent. I have a lot of color, texture, and nuance to those ideas. Yet the moment I start going into German, Italian, Russian, the things start to go very grayscale. It's very limited, the amount of details I can provide. So I'm very aware of that, where I could say, here my vocabulary range in Spanish and French, because I've lived in those countries. In some cases, I've been translating back and forth and using the language in many different contexts. So the vocabulary range is quite varied, and different levels as well, of like formal, academic, professional, street, and conversational. And when I get to some of the other languages, those interactions are so limited because I haven't been there or haven't been solicited to be explaining and reading and listening and writing, and so those experiences are so much more limited. So I might have one word, whereas in another context, like for French, Spanish, I might have 20 words, and I have to figure out, according to context, what word do I want to use to express a certain idea. So it makes complete sense that my vocabulary range is so much more limited in scope. So it's not exactly something that I should judge myself or be frustrated with. It is a reality. And at the same time, I am trying to encourage people who are studying online and saying, hey, we have access to so much information, supplement. If you recognize there's a weakness, if you recognize there's a vocabulary gap, supplement it. What are your strategies? Don't just sit there and go like, oh, well, too bad. Find a solution, look for it. So it's something to also apply to myself. And with the possibility of the memory situation of, okay, if this is a reality that short term is much shorter than I would like it to be, what are my solutions with that? And perhaps that means I need to be even more, not aggressive, but active, or doubling down on the strategies, and not playing a victim card and say, hey, this is something that's affecting my this is how my brain works, and like, oh, that too bad. So similarly, as I would say, okay, I'm not living in the countries, okay, supplement, find solutions. So this is my reflection for this today for T20. This is obviously much longer in English, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to explain any of those things in the other languages, but it's just this kind of owning this process of learning language, supplementing my vocabulary, expanding on it, and finding those words that are missing, because oftentimes they miss more than once. It's not just a one-time thing. And I do feel like if I go into Google Translate, I will immediately forget that word, and it's almost like a disposable razor blade that, or it's like when I tell students, if you fill up your kitchen with disposable plates and cutlery and plastic spoons and forks and paper cups, that's going to be so wasteful. If you're doing that every day, find something thrown away. That's kind of how some people approach the vocabulary with the Google Translate, that they just get it and then dispose of it. They don't actually keep it in a notebook, or keep it on some kind of a note, a piece of like a note, like a Post-it, so they can kind of retain it. And so I want to own the fact that finding those vocabulary words more actively when I'm speaking, and right after speaking, make a recording to go back, listen, and take those notes. Anyway, that's my reflection. Yeah. Hola a todos. Hoy es viernes el 28 de febrero, y hoy normalmente hacemos una grabación 28 para ver el progreso que hemos hecho en 4 semanas desde el inicio del mes y inicio del reto. En este momento estoy reflexionando sobre cosas de la memoria activa, corta y memoria de largo plazo. Y estoy componiendo un poco de música y me doy cuenta que si no grabo, si no escribo, si no anoto, sí se va muy fácilmente y pierdo un poco de fluidez con mis propias composiciones, porque si no lo anoto, pues es como si lo estoy descubriendo por primera vez. Y en el momento que lo estoy escribiendo es muy fluido y tengo mucha pasión en eso. Y es algo cooperativo que puedo ver con los idiomas, que si me va una palabra, que no me acuerdo una palabra, a veces intento explicar lo que estoy intentando decir, o si no encuentro la palabra, tal vez ahorita abandono y lo digo simplemente en inglés. Y hablo mucho de estrategias de comunicación y estrategias de apoyar la memoria. Entonces, sí, como tomando notas de una palabra que falta y no solamente fijar que la mente va a recordar, porque a veces no. Y yo creo que con la TDAH lo estoy observando que sí, con más frecuencia hay momentos que hay una cosa de la memoria activa. Si no lo anoto, no lo voy a acordarme. Entonces, acabo de explicar muchísimas cosas en inglés y nada más quiero comentar brevemente que estoy muy consciente de la necesidad de seguir aprendiendo nuevas palabras. También en español todavía hay cosas nuevas que puedo aprender, y sobre todo en los otros idiomas como alemán, italiano, ruso, de ver qué son mis estrategias para llenar esas lagunas de vocabulario. Eso es todo. Bonjour tout le monde, aujourd'hui c'est vendredi le 28 février et normalement aujourd'hui on revisite un thème de la première semaine et ça nous aide pour nous rendre compte du progrès dans 4 semaines. Et aussi, il y a quelque chose sur laquelle je réfléchis, c'est que avec la mémoire courte ou la mémoire temporaire, je me rends compte qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui m'échappent très vite, et surtout je le vois avec la musique. J'essaie d'écrire des nouvelles chansons, des bribes, et dans le moment c'est très fluide, j'ai un truc sur les mains, mais quelques heures plus tard, ou même très peu de temps après, je peux très vite oublier si je ne fais pas un enregistrement, si je note pas ce que je suis en train de faire. C'est frustrant, mais en même temps, j'essaie maintenant d'accepter et de trouver des stratégies et pas batailler contre ça. Et c'est aussi quelque chose que je note, que je constate avec les enregistrements que je fais avec le défi, parce qu'il y a des mots des fois qui m'échappent et des fois je peux m'expliquer, ou sinon je dis tout simplement le mot en anglais et peut-être plus tard je vais revoir l'enregistrement pour me rappeler de qu'est-ce que c'était que je voulais dire et comment je peux apprendre ce mot. Mais le fait que j'observe tous ces trucs avec la musique, je me rends compte que c'est vraiment nécessaire que je note ces mots, parce que sinon je vais oublier. Ça va pas juste arriver tout seul dans la mémoire. Il faut le travailler, il faut le pratiquer, il faut avoir des petits rappels. Et ouais, c'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Hallo an alle, heute ist Freitag, der 28. Februar und heute normalerweise sprechen wir darüber etwas, das wir haben in der Ärztewoche gesprochen. Heute möchte ich ein bisschen denken an, wie lerne ich neue Wörter für mein Vokabeln auf Deutsch zum Beispiel. Und ich sehe, dass mit der Musik ich schreibe etwas und danach ich erinnere mich nicht sehr schnell mit nicht so viel Zeit und vielleicht es gibt keine Videoaufnahme oder Aufnahme oder ich schreibe es nicht und ich erinnere mich nicht. Also ich muss etwas zu schreiben oder eine Aufnahme zu tun. Und auch möchte ich mehr Vokabeln lernen auf Deutsch und ich sehe das auf Spanisch und auf Französisch. Ich kenne mehr Wörter und es ist normal. Ich war in Frankreich viele Zeit und auch jetzt in Mexiko viele Zeit und in Deutschland es war nur eine Woche und wie mache ich Übungen und Praxis? Ich lese gar nichts und ich höre nicht so viel und ich kann mehr zu tun und ich möchte und ja, das ist ein Ziel für mich für March und ja, das alle für heute. Ciao a tutti, oggi è venerdì 28 di febbraio e oggi parlo un po' di ricordarmi nuove parole, per esempio in italiano e anche anch'io scrivo musica e in questo momento posso vedere che non mi ricordo molto bene una cosa nuova e devo scrivere, devo fare una registrazione per aiutarmi e senza fare questo è molto facile non ricordarmi. E anche capisco che non ho abitato in Italia e non pratico molto come leggere, ascoltare, scrivere, parlo ogni giorno nella sfida, ma non è enough per imparare nuove parole e penso che voglio fare meglio questo in marzo. Questo è tutto per oggi. Всем привет, сегодня пятница, 28 февраля, и сегодня я говорю немного, как-то я учусь новые слова, и также как-то я помню слова, и также я вижу, что когда я пишу музыку. Может быть, я не помню, потому что это сейчас, и это не длинное время, много времени, как когда я говорю языки, по языкам, и я вижу, что на русском я никогда был в России, и поэтому у меня нет много слов, как-то в жизни каждый день. Я могу объяснить что-нибудь, что я думаю, но как-то это жизнь, дверь открыть, и я не знаю. Это, например, и как могу делать, чтобы учиться больше слова. И я должен написать больше и имеет, что я хочу читать, слушать, посмотреть и чтобы практиковать. И это все на сегодня. Большое спасибо. Пока.